Thank you very much, Mr. Dharma. I'll be very briefly talking to you about basically the history of our Assyrian nation and our church. Basically, I would like to say that we, the Assyrians and the Yazidis, are not new immigrants to the land of Mesopotamia. We are indeed the indigenous people of the land. Politically speaking, the Christian church has encountered many problems since its beginning, and that was mainly because of the political tension between the Roman Empire and the Persian Empire in the first Christian era. And as years passed on, political corruption has happened in many of the countries that nowadays we are living in. And once political corruption is being dominated, obviously, by personal gain, exercising power over others, invasions, and interest for oil, etc. Since it's becoming like this, then it is no longer can be somehow described as politics relating to the assistance of others. And since this political tension, as I mentioned, has happened during the first centuries, really Christianity has encountered many persecutions, as I said, from the beginning Christian era. Christianity, as you know, that began from the beginning of the receiving of the disciples or the apostles, the Holy Spirit, and it's spread across Odessa, which is Orpha today, and since then the Assyrians have become Christians. We, the Christian church, who speak the language, the Aramaic language, the language of Christ, have somehow enlightened the Arabs by somehow translating many of the books from Aristotle, like Aristotle topics, from Syriac into Arabic. That was done by our patriarch in the 7th century. And also scholars from our church known as Ibn Ishaq, has translated the Greek classic into Arabic, the words of Plato, Aristotle, etc. Centuries of persecutions, as I said, have been encountering in our church, and especially the emergence of Islam, which happened in the 7th century, the imposition of taxation, for instance, that was imposed by Caliph Omar I, who ruled from 634 to 644, who established a threefold system of taxation. A Muslim had only to pay zakat, which is a poor rate, and a non-Muslim, on the other hand, had to pay kharj, a tax on the land. In addition, a non-Muslim had to pay jizya, which is a poll tax levied in lieu of military service. Today, as I can see it, in the 21st century, the ISIS is doing exactly what has been done previously. So their ideology and strategy has not changed as Islam emerged from the beginning of the 7th century. And also during the Caliphate emperors and rulers, many persecutions have been somehow imposed upon the Christians. For instance, in the Caliph Mutawakkil, who ruled from 846 to 861, Christians had to wear distinctive garments. On the other hand, he also ordered the destruction of graves of the Christians, and I think this was done even in Libya in these 2 years or 3 years ago. And in the 13th century, we notice and see how the Mongolians, for instance, Tamerlane, who ruled. We could see from the history that in Isfahan, ordering his military, they beheaded almost 70,000 people. In Baghdad, 90 people where the heads were somehow made as a pyramid during these centuries. Obviously, Tamerlane targeted non-Muslims by, I quote what he says, washing the sword of Islam in the blood of the infidels. And as we continue in the history, we can see that even in the 14th century, where the Turks and the Kurds obviously control the Mesopotamia places, we encountered in the 14th century again a massacre. From 1405 to 1914, almost 510 years, the Christians in Mesopotamia encountered many persecutions. And obviously in 1914 until 1919, the Saifo. In 1933, the massacre of Semele, which nobody is talking about nowadays. Finally, in this 21st century, we encountered the persecution which happened in the plains of Nineveh, where many Christians from Mosul were displaced, were asked to leave. The smell of the incense were somehow cut off. The bells of churches were stopped. And as we could see that many Christians and the Yazidis in particular were somehow oppressed. On the other hand, I would like to say that in 1992 there was a decree by United Nations, which is A/RES 47/135, where it states the Declaration on the Rights of Persons belonging to the national or ethnic, religious and linguistic minorities. To be honest, since 1991, where the first establishment of the country of Iraq, we didn't see anything since then. Finally, maybe to I would emphasize that what is happening nowadays and what happened last year in Iraq and in Syria, where almost 300 members of our church had been kidnapped, we can see the silence of the world. I deplore what happened in France, where they killed almost 3 people, and I can't remember anyhow. But the whole world noticed and saw that in media. But what about these Christians and the Yazidis, which were persecuted somehow? Nobody has said anything about them. And I would like to say that radical Muslims and radical Islam did not exist by itself. And unfortunately, today Europe and the West in particular are reaping and will continue to reap what has previously been sowed. Christians, to be honest, are not only hostage of Middle Eastern politics, but rather it has become a victim and scapegoat in each tide of foreign intervention. What we need today is, I should propose that here, is we need a safe haven to be established in northern Iraq, a safe haven that should be supported by the UN, and also to consider the matter of genocides that happened in Semele 33 and what's happening today in what happened today in Iraq. I should conclude by saying I was an hour ago I was having my lunch in the cafeteria downstairs, where I saw a peacock who was just eating among the smokers who were outside smoking there. The amazing thing that caught me was I could see that the peacock is a bird, but he has his dignity. It has his dignity and right not to be harmed and not to be killed. So I said, how about in the United Nations here, we are presenting a case of so many people, innocent people, human beings, have been harmed and killed in the Mesopotamia, and I hope that, not like the bird, but as human beings, we will be also supported and by the United Nations, and at least respect and have our dignity and right, whether in religious matter or other things. Thank you very much.
Thank you.